mean, can you imagine how awesome it will be to have American astronauts plant the flag on another planet for the first time? Yeah! This is what victory feels like. Yeah!
Imagine
A podcast.
where time drifts slowly,
A podcast.
Where
Isaac
carries you away.
So let me be clear. We tortured some folks.
Hey, hi, hello, it's Isaac. You're listening to Coexist Inc. Well, that didn't last very long. As of Wednesday afternoon, June 24th, Elon Musk is no longer a trillionaire. He had that title for all of 12 days. They say facts don't care about your feelings, but money sure does. What happened to that $400 billion he could just lose overnight that just evaporates? It's almost as if it doesn't exist at all, right? It's crazy to think that Musk's very brief trillionaire status is based upon a story he's telling, which is that there will be 1 million people on Mars within our lifetimes. That's part of the deal. That's part of the contract he has set up that creates this SpaceX wealth. You'll hear him say this refrain. He likes to say that we must extend the light of consciousness into the stars.
So I'm like, I don't know. Bottom line is, I think we need to assume that life and consciousness is extremely rare, and it might only be us. And if that's the case, then we need to do everything possible to ensure that the light of consciousness is not extinguished, because we're effectively, the way I view it is, the image in my mind is of a tiny candle in a vast darkness, a tiny candle of consciousness that could easily go out. And that's why it's important to make life multiplanetary, such that if there is a natural disaster or a man-made disaster on Earth, that consciousness continues. That's the purpose of SpaceX.
He tweeted recently something that makes no sense to me, but again, I think that a lot of those hot couch morons who look up to Musk see him as some sort of aspirational figure, that they too can be morons and trillionaires. This appeals to them. He said, "Make our sun sentient to understand the universe and extend the light of consciousness to the stars." Huh? This, of course, is very, very stupid. We will never leave this planet. Not in our corporeal form. Our bodies are tethered to this earth, and that's actually a beautiful thing. Only someone who hates their body would want to go live in space, so I guess it makes sense for someone like Elon Musk. Have you seen this guy's body? I don't think most people take this space colonization shit seriously. A cursory inventory of the consequences of living off-planet should be enough to understand it's just not feasible and it's not very pleasant out there. These science charlatans will tell you, but it is possible, you see? We just don't have the technology yet. They're morons. Yes, most anything could be reasoned as a possibility. It is technically possible. That doesn't mean that you should pursue it. Rich assholes will smugly tell some drunk that he's an idiot for playing the lottery. The odds are near impossible. The drunk will say, but there's still a chance, and this is out of his desperation and his delusion. And that desperate and delusional math of the drunk playing the lottery is still better than the math of Elon Musk's SpaceX colonization nonsense. I will always remember when that other idiot, Lex Fridman, had a NASA biologist on his show to talk about the consequences of astronauts living on the International Space Station for less than a year. He said that when the astronauts would come back to Earth, they had to be naked for weeks because the sensation of clothes on their skin after being in zero gravity was so painful that they could not wear anything. And that's just for like a brief period of time on a space station. Imagine the 9-month venture to Mars and then trying to set a space colony on a place without really an atmosphere and without really any beauty whatsoever. I mean, come on, let's get real here. But Lex Fridman's response to this was that it's possible, though. And that because it's possible, because of AI, I guess, that it is mankind's responsibility, again, to do this extending consciousness into the stars, into the universe. And that eventually we will have technology that could engineer away the heat death of the universe. Do you really take these people seriously? We are stuck here, but we don't have to be stuck here with people like Elon Musk. People like Elon will always exist. We will always have greedy, idiotic sociopaths, but we shouldn't have to know that they exist. The fact that Elon Musk is on, my mind obviously a lot, is an absolute tragedy, and I would like for it to stop at some point soon. But that's not happening today, not on today's episode. Today I am joined by my brother in Elon hatred, Jacob Silverman. He actually had me come over to his lovely home in New York, and we sat and talked Elon, his trillionaire status, and space. Enjoy the show.
You have to give him credit. He's one of our great geniuses, and we have to protect our genius. You know, we have to protect Thomas Edison, and we have to protect all of these people that came up with originally the light bulb and the wheel and all of these things. And he's one of our very smart people, and we want to cherish those people. That's very important. But he's done a very good job.
Oh, that was fun troubleshooting. Embarrassing, dude. I don't feel very professional. It's coming here and looking up YouTube tutorials.
Well, you shouldn't. You have much to atone for.
When is our Day of Atonement? When's that happen again?
Sometime in the fall, usually.
I always mix up Rosh Hashanah, the dates of Rosh Hashanah, and Seder.
Oh, yeah, and Passover. Yeah, well, Yom Kippur is the one you're looking for.
That's Rosh Hashanah is New Year. My Jewish credentials just going out the window. Although Dan Bilzerian, 12% Jewish, it turns out.
Really? He had the genetic test?
I guess so. I feel like it's funny how these the new pseudo anti-Zionists like him and the guy who's running for the governor of Florida, James Fishback.
Oh yeah,
are doing their genetic testing. James Fishback still hasn't released his because everyone's like he's a Jewish Colombian kid, basically.
Is that? I mean, it's strange to speculate, but I know that this is all these people care about. He does, frankly, look like a POC.
Doesn't he?
Yeah, he does not look like a pure Aryan stock or whatever the right wingers value these days.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the Nazi official he looks the closest to.
But it's the that's how the Groypers roll these days. Is that it's a very multicultural fascism.
Yeah, I was asking
multi-ethnic at least.
I was asking Dan Bilzerian to help me make sense of this. How can Jews? Because he was saying Marx is Jewish, which I said is kind of iffy. Marx didn't identify as Jewish. He was baptized. Wasn't a big fan of the Jews.
Sure.
Marx. But he's like, but he came from a long lineage of Jews. And I was like, well, so did I. But am I Jewish? I don't know. And then he copped to being 12% Jewish. And I was like, what's the threshold, buddy? Like, when do you cease to be Jewish? What makes you Jewish even?
Right. Did he have an answer?
No, of course not. He said, well, I'm also 12% Norwegian. I was like, I guess that balances it out somehow.
Does he identify as any religion?
No, even with his Armenian, well, he's doing that fake Christian bullshit, but even his Armenianness, he doesn't identify with it, which I guess good.
It's just about money.
Yeah.
Money and guns.
Armenians like money. They're, they share that with Jews, right? The diasporids who love white collar crime. Where they make sense of their purity test, they all fail it eventually.
Sure.
Right? That was the whole joke with the Nazis too. It's like eventually you all fail the purity test. So, yeah, he was a funny guy to be around. Shorter than you'd think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can That wouldn't surprise me if he's of Rogan-esque stature.
He's probably a little bigger than Rogan, I think. Yeah, but chicken legs, man. Just the tiniest, smoothest legs, like totally hairless. Like he lasered his own leg hair off. I thought that was very strange. Yeah, his nipples were rock hard too during the entire interview. I can't. Your shirt's too loose. I can't tell if your nipples are hard right now.
Mostly, I don't know. At rest.
Did your nipples get rock hard when the SpaceX IPO was valued at what, 1.4 trillion?
Great segue.
Like yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh God, what a mess. I mean, now I think, at least as of this recording, the price is basically back to the initial IPO price, or there was a surge and now back, and the right people made their fees and sold at the top probably, and now everyone else gets soaked. It's depressing,
isn't it? It's a bummer. And so thank you for having me here in the Elon Hate HQ. Jacob Silverman, a brother in Elon hatred. Yeah, I'm trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand how it's possible. I feel like Elon's been out of the news a little more than usual.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been as all present as he was in the beginning of Trump's term, but I guess he's just been biding his time for this SpaceX IPO. How long do you know has it been in the works that they've been planning for this?
Well, that I can't really say. I mean, I think the vision for Musk for a while now has been to combine the companies, his various companies, into one omni fraud. And I mean, this is something he's been working on one form or another for many years, since he did the Solar City deal with Tesla that he engineered and he was on both sides of. And then he, more recently he sold XAI to SpaceX in one of these circular deals. And then, he would, I think, if possible, like to combine basically the SpaceX beast with Tesla. But I think the important things that stick out to me are just, one, the corruption surrounding how this thing was listed, how they changed a lot of market rules in order to get the listing. It's going to be put into index funds or into major index listings almost immediately, meaning all this like passive investment, basically people's retirement accounts are going to be invested in SpaceX, whether they like it or not. That kind of stuff to me is a big deal. And but it's just so much of our era that, crime is legal now. Everyone knows it. Everyone sees what's happening. But all the relevant decision makers want this to happen. So it's going to play out in this form so everyone can get their fees and their skim.
Take me through this, how this, I don't know if you know how this IPO stuff works, because it's out of my ballpark. I'm not, I dropped out of Econ 101 in college because it made me so mad.
I didn't bother taking it, so.
Yeah, well, I feel like you have a better grasp of it than I do. But how can SpaceX be worth this much money?
Well, it shouldn't be really. People with more advanced economics training will talk about, price to earnings ratio or stuff like that. But let's just start with basic things. Like SpaceX is not a profitable company. Yeah, it does some things that are useful or even important, like putting satellites into space. It's basically the main one in town these days. But it is not a profitable company, and it absorbed XAI and X, which are not profitable either. So, but we've seemed to, especially with the AI boom, which like the SpaceX IPO has to be seen as part of that AI boom. None of these companies are profitable, and yet that very basic sort of rubric or our sense of judgment has seemingly gone out the window, and that it doesn't really matter, that the profits will somehow come later. I mean, there was sort of this earlier feeling, especially first with Amazon, which managed to do it, and then with Uber to an extent, that like you capture a market or create a new one. It doesn't matter if you lose a lot of money along the way. Eventually, after you have this market to yourself, you can raise prices whether it's with Amazon's products or with AWS or with Uber's taxis, and then, let the profits flow from there. But I don't think that that's going to happen with any of Musk's companies, and in whatever form they exist, and certainly not now. Like, the profits just aren't going to be there. But the other thing that normally comes after that is, okay, say you want to take a company public, whether it's profitable or not. There are necessary filings that you do. There's one called the main one is an S1, which is sort of like this diagnostic almost of your company, both like what it looks like and your goals. And there has to be some acknowledgments of its vulnerabilities potentially. But the Musk one is insane. I mean, the SpaceX one. There's some good breakdowns, especially on YouTube, of some people who've gone through these. But like, bonuses for starting a civilization on Mars, like all the sort of lofty sci-fi speak that seems to define Musk for years is in this like official SEC filing. And then the main thing that I alluded to earlier that's changing is, usually it takes companies time to go public. There were waiting periods. There are
rules and regulations.
Yes, very simply, that don't really exist anymore. And what you had was basically everyone knew that SpaceX is not a great business necessarily. I mean, it's not making money. But if you're on Wall Street, you can make money off of SpaceX going public. So, there are all the banks competing to help lead the IPO. There were actually like the different markets competing with one another to change or even just shred their own rules in order so that SpaceX could kind of go public practically immediately and then be very quickly listed in these indexes of the world's biggest companies. And once you get that, that's really where the money potentially is to help kind of inflate SpaceX, which is, kind of a pump and dump or stock manipulation play, like a lot of what Musk has done for years with Tesla. But what happens is, so SpaceX goes public so quickly, it's immediately listed in like, some of these stock indices that declare it one of the top 100 companies in the world or whatever it is. And that means that all these retirement funds at Vanguard or wherever else immediately buy shares of SpaceX. And what they do is they often dump other tech stocks. I mean, there are some reports in the Financial Times and elsewhere. They'll show like how much Apple stock is being dumped on the market by these big institutions in order to buy SpaceX stock. And then what happens from there is, the people who were in early, like Musk and his investors and Musk himself, get to reap the benefits of the stock that gets juiced, as we saw in that first week or so, with all this excitement and all this kind of frenzy of activity that isn't really earned in a traditional sense, but is there. And also you get all this consumer activity, whereas like the day traders that you might know in your life, or people on X.
I refuse to know anyone.
Yeah, people on. My neighbor used to be one. Or people who you see on social media or whatever. Like the people who FOMO in, then get dumped on, and that's what I think what's been happening more in the last few days or last week, as you see the price go back down. And you could just always be certain here that the insiders are winning, but it's never been more clear, I think, because of the way these rules have been changed, because of the clear rush to bring this company to market in a way that's not normally done anywhere. And that, again, like we're always saying, like under a normal society or a normal regime, like this wouldn't happen. But this is just one of many examples of things like that we've seen in Trump too. That, like, even in the sort of loose liberalism of the Biden administration, like this wouldn't be allowed to happen.
Well, you had what's her face, Lena Khan.
Yeah,
right? She wouldn't have let this happen, right?
She wasn't in charge of the SEC, but I think she would have had her ways, perhaps, and even the SEC at the time probably wouldn't have allowed this to happen, to like have this sort of race to the bottom to repeal rules and regulations in order to extract a few $1 million in fees from another Musk project.
So who is really benefiting from this? Because my theory of Elon Musk is that he's a fucking moron. So I don't think he really masterminded this. I think he's the face of it. He's the CEO of this fraudulence. And that there are other people who are putting him forward I hope in our lifetimes we see him fall on some kind of sword. but it will be on behalf of, I think, the people who are actually benefiting from this illegal maneuver. Who we don't know the names of them maybe, but who else is truly benefiting from something like SpaceX going public and just stealing your grandma's retirement?
Well, another thing that's worth noting is that, like with some other tech companies, or I mean, this happens with other corporations too. But one thing that Facebook famously did with Mark Zuckerberg when it went public was that he has a different class of voting shares that are worth a lot more than like ones that big investors or even you and I might own. So, like, I mean, this is important, I think, with SpaceX, that Musk is preserving his hold over the company not only by owning a lot of shares, but by them creating other classes of shares. Sometimes they're like Class A, B, C for different companies that have a lot more voting power. So Musk, if he wants to, or whoever he sort of represents, will have control over this company forever. Like, I mean, one people who benefit include Musk and the board and the early investors. I mean, there was always a very pliant board. I mean, there's some good reporting the last couple of years in the Wall Street Journal about people on the board being worried about Musk's drug use and his erratic behavior and stuff, but none of that went anywhere because he has them under his thumb, and now he's made them all very rich. And his early backers, who include like various Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds, some seemingly unknown backers in Russia and China who bought shares in SpaceX through, like, there are these brokers or middlemen sometimes who operate in the Caribbean or elsewhere, that might have just a name. I forget the name of the latest one for SpaceX, but it's like River Thistle LLC or something. and what companies like this sometimes do is they allow money to come in from less scrupulous or maybe even sanctioned areas. So, we've known before that there, not to say that, all Chinese money is bad, but, we know the world we kind of live in and how these geopolitics work. And so this is something that has sometimes been hidden, or sometimes more in the open. But we know that SpaceX does have foreign money that's flowed in that hasn't really been declared in the sense that, like, hey, the Saudis are investing again. But, those are the kinds of people I think are able to cash out. And also, like, anyone on Wall Street that can reap a fee from this. Like, it means, like, kind of small-time money managers, the thousands of them that work for Bank of America or whoever else, can convince their clients, like, hey, you should buy some SpaceX stock. It's the hot new thing. But it also means the big firms, like, the bankers at J.P. Morgan Chase or Morgan Stanley who have helped Musk in the past. Like, those are the ones who can now, like, have another feather in their cap of a quote unquote successful IPO, even though by a lot of standards this isn't. But it ends up really being more about the losers or just any kind of common investor, I would say, or anyone who unfortunately has to have a piece of their retirement account in this.
So it just sounds like a lot of skimming.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I feel like I feel like they're big, they're probably people who can, I don't know what kind of lock-in periods there might be for some of the early investors, but I think some of them will certainly sell out big, and I'm sure some of them have unloaded shares in, like, kind of secondary investment rounds, but they will eventually, be able to unload their stakes for a lot more than they acquired them for. But I think along the way, what you see is, like, what makes sort of this, like, almost like a RICO situation involving half of Wall Street is just, like, is that people can skim, is that there's, like, so many different institutions get a taste, and that kind of helps a lot of people. And it's not necessarily like, this, I don't know if this is going to make any investment banks year, but it's certainly one that they want in on, and one that, some tens of millions of dollars more in the kitty, that's certainly helpful.
It seems like it's at the expense of an actual economy, in that I think about the case that vegans will make for you about how much energy is expended on eating meat, and you grow the wheat or the cattle feed, and then only 10% of the nutritional, like, energy caloric value of that food that you grow gets absorbed into the cattle. And then we only get 10% of that cattle's nutrition value. So it's like this incredibly exponential depreciating return of I guess, caloric investment of energy into eating. I feel like that's kind of how the economy works to a certain extent as well, which is why I always think that any sort of charitable bullshit that some billionaire does at the end of their life, it's like the cost of that charity is that whatever they give you for that charity doesn't even compare to what they raped and pillaged from the world in order to create that, even that illusion of wealth itself.
Yeah, well, I think increasingly the economy is kind of hallucinatory, and the things that we're calling some of our most valuable companies, and certainly some of the most hyped, like where's the there? Like what? I remember once many years ago, I think I wrote something about this, like I don't know, 12 plus years ago, about going to South by Southwest and seeing Yevgeny Morozov, this like cantankerous, very good tech critic, who has this thick Belarusian accent. He was like talking about like 1 billion apps have been sold. Where's the betterness? And I think of that a lot. Like, where's the betterness? And I think people are starting to ask that with AI. And obviously that is part of what we're talking about here with SpaceX. But like, and so interesting way in which the kind of the politics of AI are up for grabs, because people are coming at it from different directions. Certainly a lot of the data center criticism, but you know, people see their jobs going away, or their kids becoming dumb in school,
or killing themselves,
or
Yeah.
psychosis, or just like having to shoehorn it into their own workflow because their bosses are telling them to. Like, so like that. Some of that backlash is here. It's just it's coming in different directions, but people are seeing like this isn't making their life better, and and we see that over and over again. Certainly with the AI companies, is like, you know, they're polluting your community, or they're not, or they're any of the number of negative externalities we just listed. The revolution, which we keep being promised, is not really happening. Or we've been promised revolution or apocalypse, and not. We seem to have some terrible combination of both. And I don't know what that means for like a larger bubble bursting. You know, I feel like we went through some of this with crypto. On the other hand, there wasn't necessarily as much at stake then. Like, and there were a lot of people who thought it was just bullshit off the bat. But you know, there also were these people pounding the table saying this is revolutionary, like something's coming along that you're just missing out on. And it's like they've doubled down, or you know, they've infinitely doubled down on this thing with in terms of their promises and the resources invested, and we'll never really reap it. I mean, this is kind of what Ed Zitron and some other people talk about, is that even just the amount of money being promised to spend, much less the amount being spent, is sort of impossible to make back in any kind of, by any reasonable economic measure. And so what are we really doing? We're like seemingly subsidizing the insane promises of people who claim that they need to accumulate $1 trillion in order to save humanity. None of that really makes sense to me, and I think none of that, put in that kind of order, makes sense to a lot of people, but they feel helpless to otherwise stop it.
I do wonder how many people like believe that any of this is real, and especially even just calling him a trillionaire. I think we should refrain from doing that, because it's not even, he doesn't even really have it, right? Well, it's all, he has $1.4 trillion that he cannot touch. Yeah,
I think the numbers are very sort of deceptive and kind of made up. I mean, that's what I used to always say with crypto too. And certainly as this stuff becomes just more of like a stock play, you know, what Musk is doing is he runs up the number of his supposed fortune in order that he can borrow against that, like a lot of billionaires. And so I think what matters in that sense is that when number go up, you know, to reference the title of Zeke Fox's book, you know, Musk can borrow more and has more media attention and sort of more power in some broader sense. But yeah, that is not, he has nowhere near that amount of cash at hand, or he's not liquid. But what is important to know, or what would be important to know, is like how leveraged is the guy? Like how much has he borrowed against that 1.4 trillion?
And we don't know
and
that.
Not really. And what does that look like? Who does he owe? You know, when does he get margin called, or when do things like actually turn bad for him? Yeah, I think what's been deeply important to him for a long time is to keep all those plates spinning, by combining companies and juicing the Tesla stock price. And it is all this sort of like vaudeville show designed to boost these numbers around Musk so that he can convince banks to loan him more money and keep this cycle going until somehow the music stops in the form of his own death or settling another planet or whatever else might happen. Yeah, I mean,
one of those is definitely going to happen.
Yeah,
the other one,
and
not so much.
he's not the only guy doing this. I mean, like Oracle and Larry Ellison I think are pretty deeply leveraged, and I'm sure there are plenty of other very rich guys. I mean, it goes off of this almost like Bush era idea of like ever increasing wealth, which during the Bush era we thought that about the housing market, that real estate would go up indefinitely.
Right.
And now, I mean, in a way, like, who can blame them? I guess like it's just the number is so insane that like Musk went from what $350 billion near the end of the Biden administration, I think, to now we're speaking about 1.4 trillion, which again doesn't seem like a real number, but it's real enough. It's like real enough to exercise power, to borrow money, or to remain above accountability for a while.
Only because people agree to this game. That they're playing, and it's so funny. It's like we agree to play this game, but they keep making it up and changing the rules as they go, and we're fine with it, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I think that's why that was such a clear example with SpaceX going public. Like that, you can you don't have to go that deep. You can like read it in The Guardian or Reuters or whatever that like, oh, the rules of this market were changed in order so this company could go public. But what can they do? They're all just sort of laughing in our faces.
I know, but doesn't that mean that we could also change the rules in the other direction and just kind of like recreate this entire notion of like this market global economy and be like, okay, here are the new rules,
right,
and here's how it's going to work potentially. I don't know how we would even fucking get there.
Yeah,
but it just does seem like we're all held hostage here.
Yeah. Well, certainly the way this has been created and the way this company is now the shares are being sold, we are being held hostage because a lot of retirement funds and other institutions are being invested in this that we wouldn't normally want to. And I think, changing this requires rethinking what value means, or maybe even going back to a more traditional sense of things. Like, is a company making money? What kind of public benefit does it bring? What Musk right now has the law sort of engineered in his favor on every level. Like, you can't even, they're having trouble even suing him over the pollution in Nashville from the big Colossus supercomputer there, where they're just running these incredibly polluting gas turbines and also doing other stuff like buying batteries from other divisions from Tesla. And like, there's a lot. What also happens in like the Muskonomy, as it's sometimes called, is that all of his companies do business with one another. Like, a lot of the Cybertrucks have actually been bought by, I think, SpaceX. There are a lot of assholes out there with the Cybertruck, but a number of them have been bought by other Musk companies.
SpaceX, and for some reason, every fucking chud in South Florida is. I see so many of them in my hometown.
Yeah,
It's
they're pretty
alarming.
rare here in Brooklyn. We see one or two.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of them in Florida, and God, are they fucking stupid looking. I've even seen like the chromed out ones.
Yeah,
they buff it so that people will. It feels just so dangerous and stupid. Yeah, I think about what would happen if some aliens came down, which they're never going to do. So I hate to disappoint everybody. The aliens are not coming to save us. But if they did hypothetically come down and we tried to explain to them our world and be like, this is like, they'd be like, bring us to your leader, your wealthiest person. And you show them Elon Musk and he's like, why is this guy and the wealthiest person? I don't think anybody could actually explain, make sense of why. I feel like we should go back to warlords. Like, who's the most badass guy? Who can just, like, you have to fight them physically in order to be in charge. That would make a lot more sense, because Elon Musk is not the most charismatic. Far from it. He's ugly. He's he cannot fight, right? There's nothing.
He
there's
pulled
no
out of a
quali-
fight famously
Oh yeah,
against Zuckerberg.
that would have been. That's what they should have done on the White House front lawn.
Yes.
That would have been awesome.
That's the cage match we could have enjoyed.
But it is just so immensely frustrating. And especially, I was watching this video back in, I think it was 2007, when Musk didn't have hair plugs quite yet. And he's being interviewed by some guy you see on commercials all the time now, but I guess he was doing interviews for some news channel back then. And the amount of glazing that occurred. And even then, he was talking about colonizing space. This has been something on his mind. Maybe it's like genuinely something he believes in. But if you do believe in space colonization, you're a moron. Like, it is 1,000% never going to fucking happen. But back then, even in 2007, he's talking about the need to bring the light of consciousness.
Really, he used the same phrase.
Something very close to that. So
Yeah.
he has been saying this for a while.
Yeah.
And I wonder, so I don't want to give him credit for being like it's been this long play, like that he saw it coming, like this need for it or whatever, because there are two possibilities here. Either he really does believe that space colonization is possible, or he knows it's just like this total scam, like you said, a vaudevillian way of manipulating the market, and that would make him smarter. So which version? I don't know.
I actually
what to believe in.
I think in a lot of ways he genuinely believes it. I mean, he styles himself as an engineer and a quantitative thinker, but you know we can dismiss that. But you know, I'm blanking on some proper nouns, the name of this guy. But there was something called, I believe it was called the Mars Society. It was in the Bay Area in the 90s and early 2000s, and like Musk joined the society around when he made his PayPal fortune. This was something I did a little bit about in a podcast I did for CBC, but that's why I'm forgetting on some of the names. But he basically joined the society, and these are people who are interested in exploring Mars or colonizing it to some degree. But in typical Musk fashion, he basically kind of tried to take over the group, and then had a split because he felt the need to be in charge. I mean, this was just kind of some Bay Area tech guys for whom this was like a serious hobby almost. It wasn't like, and they wanted to talk about the science of it, and now one of the guy who's head of the group now, even today, he had a break with Musk, of course, eventually, and he still believes in like going to Mars in some form, but he is at least somewhat more realistic and thinks like you cannot have 1 million people on Mars at any point, but that's just insane. And like the whole Musk model, which is like much more this maximalist vision of you're gonna have all these starships launching towards Mars is impossible. So yeah, I think like basically what I'm trying to say is that even in like sort of a quote unquote serious like Mars guy, like this man whose name I'm blanking on from the Mars Society, like has a much more modest vision for what that should be. And then of course a lot of very credible people from like the world of astrophysics and elsewhere have talked about how like, yeah, there's a future in space, but it's mostly space probes and it's not really human man because it's incredibly unforgiving.
Yeah. You heard about the space herpes?
I don't think I've heard that one, but I know that, you know, on Mars, you know, the soil is toxic and the radiation will kill you, among many other things. Like, we're never going to terraform this thing.
No.
But I do think, like, that speaks to Musk's, like, sense of unreality, which is, you know, whether it's quote-unquote real or not, I think he does believe it. Like, I think a lot of the sci-fi stories of his youth were not cautionary tales or allegories for him. They are sort of blueprints or things that he's come to believe. Like, this is perhaps true to some extent for some of his peers, but you know, there's been a lot of talk about how he believes that we live in some kind of computer simulation.
Oh God,
or that you know,
I don't want
at
to
which
hear
he's
about that
of
shit.
course, you know, the kind of the unrecognized God at the center of it. You know, call it psychosis or whatever you want, but I do think he believes in a lot of this stuff. I mean,
I think to a degree you have to.
yeah,
Right?
and whatever sort of causes that or maintains that level of belief. I mean, one, it could be, you know, he's gotten a lot of attention and profit from it. But, you know, to look at something sort of in parallel to that, The woke mind virus is something that everyone thought was this joke at first, but now has become very clear, as he's said a number of times for several years now, is about his trans daughter, Vivian Wilson, who he dead names and denies and says the woke mind virus killed my son. Um, you know, Unfortunately, given how Musk is, like, we are all subject to his neuroses or psychoses, like things that a normal person might have worked out in the context of a family or a therapist, become part of his like totalizing worldview. And to me, that was very instructive. That like, yeah, the woke mind virus has become this sort of like political problem, I guess, or incorporate politics into it. But it really just started with his like personal bigotry and discontent and personal grievance toward his own child.
He's compared himself to Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
In terms of like spreading his seed around.
Yeah.
And again, it's so embarrassing to be ruled in some capacity by this fucking guy. And I don't know if you get any pushback for being such a big hater of Elon Musk.
I still do sometimes. I mean, I was at a book festival in the fall. I mean, granted, it was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which now is a nice festival there, but you get, kind of a politically diverse crowd, and like some conservative people were talking to me, or someone's like, well, is the world better off or worse for him? And I'm like, I sort of did like a we shouldn't have billionaires type thing. So I still get some of it.
It's worse. I mean, it's objectively worse, right?
Yeah.
I was walking by a Tesla the other day, and I was just thinking about what meaning does a Tesla actually bring? Because it didn't bring any benefits to the world. I mean, we didn't solve fucking global warming because of Teslas. It's not helping anything.
Yeah, what is the world historic achievement that we have to put up with this guy's bullshit in exchange for? There is none.
Like
I'd rather
can get internet in more remote places. Oh, great! You're like forced to be connected everywhere. That's wonderful.
Yeah, when a lot of that could just be done via fiber anyway, or other terrestrial means. And I'd rather have a Chinese electric vehicle. I mean, there are any number of ways we can respond to this. My grandmother had an EV1 in the 90s. I mean, where did that go? I've seen that documentary.
So yeah, it's just like what it means more is like, what kind of meaning does a Tesla, driving a Tesla, bring for you? Which could just be like the sheer enjoyment, like, oh, I just like the car.
Yeah.
It's like, great, fantastic. Is it worth it? Absolutely not. I mean, the sacrifice of everything for this man's very capricious, childish desires it's so depressing to me.
Well, I think it's also kind of almost a relic of a very recent time, but that seems to be over, when people thought that a kind of conscious consumerism or conscious capitalism could actually do something.
Yeah, I didn't really. Yeah, he definitely capitalized on that initially, right? With Tesla and going on liberal TV shows and becoming this mad like genius who's gonna save the world, and people found his stuttering and stammering charming somehow.
Or even at the beginning of the first Trump administration, when Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords, Musk was on these two these do nothing government advisory boards, and he left both of them and said it was based on pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords because at the time he was at least publicly a climate guy. A lot of this could be disingenuous and sort of late in the game, but even stuff like having, leveraging carbon credits for so long, and especially subsidies in California and elsewhere, like, he used sort of the ideology and the business subsidies of the green movement, such as it was, for a long time.
I'm also trying to get into the head of people who still like him, because I'd say that the vast majority of Elon Musk supporters don't have the economic leverage to benefit from a SpaceX IPO.
Right.
That there's something weirder going on in their minds and their connection to Elon Musk that prevents them from waking the fuck up. It does remind me of like people who continue to wear fedoras, even though everyone's kind of collectively said this is stupid. We're gonna make fun of you for it, but they do it anyway. Like, it's not oppositional defiance disorder. There can't be that many people suffering from that. So what is it in these people's minds that's worth psychoanalyzing that attracts them to someone like Elon Musk? Is it just loser guys? I mean, not many. There can't be many women who like Elon Musk, I imagine.
Probably not. I mean, I think there are a few different sort of tranches of remaining Musk fans. Probably there are dyed-in-the-wool right-wingers who just see him kind of as a fellow traveler. There's probably the incels. I think there are a lot of people who aren't fully informed or sort of know him vaguely as that crazy guy. I mean, people who aren't necessarily on X or, have maybe more fulfilling lives, that they're doing their jobs and maybe they don't, read tech coverage, don't necessarily know kind of how execrable this guy is, or that he's helping stir up riots in Ireland, or that he's giving speeches to Tommy Robinson rallies and saying that immigrants are bringing violence and you need to be violent first. I mean,
He said that?
that was in September at the Tommy
Right.
Robinson rally. He said,
Yeah.
it was September. He did a video into the Tommy Robinson rally in
That zoom that he does all the time, it's like when he zooms in, it's like kind of blurry in the background. Makes him look so bad. Like you'd think you'd have some production
and it's
value.
pretty lo-fi, yeah.
It makes him look even fatter somehow.
Yeah, that's the one. That's what he did, and I mean, I took notes of that because I was trying to write about it for a British publication that didn't end up going for it. But I was like, look at the text of what he said. He said, "Violence is coming to you. Like you have to be violent first." And he specifically cited immigrants, and this is like to people, white working class British people or people who live in like the Midlands. Like no one's coming to harm them, but people don't necessarily know that he is speaking in these like calls to violence, or just like that. It's it's not dancing around. It's pure unadulterated fascism and bigotry. I think there are people who still don't know that, or probably people for whom that's appealing. Now, what percentage of the population is this, or like, what's his Q score of favorability lately? I don't really know, but I think there's also something with, the way that he floods the zone like Trump, and the way that he's been sort of so crazy for so long, that there's an easy way to shrug it off or shrug your shoulders, and that he kind of just dances up above each scale.
But he doesn't even like own the libs in the same way that Donald Trump does. I mean, if anything, he's just doing one self-own after another. And so I can see why I understand the appeal of Donald Trump.
Right.
I get it. I do not get Elon Musk's appeal. There's literally nothing there. And that's what also I find so astounding. I get the politics of grievance that makes you love Donald Trump for making fun of the institutions and the people, and making it like embarrassing some sort of approximation of the first grade like teacher who like was mean to you one time, and so he's mean to women, and so you appreciate that. Elon Musk is like balancing forks on his finger like some fat idiot, and you don't see that, and you're like, this guy?
Well, I think one other factor is that he still largely benefits from the support of the financial and media classes. Like, there are plenty of journalists who critique him or report on what he does, or investigate him. But certainly, like financial media and kind of, I think for the broader public, they don't necessarily see a villain reflected in like on TV or in the pages of even like the Times with the way it writes about him. And certainly he's still very useful to people as a vehicle for money making. I don't know. I'm trying to dig and find why. I mean, I certainly don't necessarily understand it on an instinctive level.
The reply guys though, they're not like in finance,
right?
So I can see why these finance people benefit, and maybe we could actually, when SpaceX crashes the economy and we need to recreate our understanding of money and how it works, maybe we could do some great public works, like build a massive gulag and throw anyone who's a financial writer who said anything nice about Elon Musk right into that gulag. I don't want to throw like the fucking losers who day trade and think that making $20 a day is like inching them closer to Elon Musk's echelon.
Sure.
Right? I feel bad for them. But the people who prop this bullshit up, need to suffer some sort of consequences.
And there are a lot. I mean,
Bring violence to them.
It is a vast, sort of network or system of people that prop up Musk and sort of all the tech oligarchs, but especially the ones at the top of these kind of money-losing empires that require constant infusions of cash. I mean, before SpaceX went public, when X and XAI were startups basically, or privately held companies by Musk, like he was getting big infusions of cash from the Saudis and other institutional investors like every few months, it seemed like. And in some ways, the IPO is just the next step in that. It's like, okay, now I'm going to tap the public.
Who taught the Saudis this stuff? Because not that long ago, they were goat herders, right?
I mean, maybe Andreessen Horowitz, if you want to look for recent examples. But, this all started stepping up really in probably during the Obama years, when you started having I think the first MBS visit it was late second Obama term, but when you had MBS starting to come over especially, but these networks between the Saudi institutional investors, mostly the PIF, and Qatar and the UAE and American venture capital firms is just so deep now that there isn't really a VC firm anymore that's not funded in some ways by one or more of those three.
What's the worst case scenario here with this SpaceX IPO, Elon Musk becoming a trillionaire? What are the potential consequences that the world suffers?
Well, that's a good question. Let's just go through a few things. I mean, one, the main promises that he offers will, as usual, never happen. I mean, we're not going to have data centers in space. We probably are going to.
Let's be. It makes me so mad that you can even say that.
Yeah,
that's so crazy.
But what might happen is he might launch, thousands more satellites, and then I forget the name of the effect, but basically, what would happen is you have a space junk problem where some of these satellites start crashing into each other, and you have that cascade of space debris that basically makes low Earth orbit nearly unusable.
That sounds like a good thing, maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of like the end of Escape from LA when he pushes the button. This is actually a fantasy of mine, when he pushes the button and basically does an EMP from space.
You push that button, everything we've accomplished for the past 500 years will be finished. Our technology, our way of life, our entire history. We'll have to start all over again. For God's sakes, don't do it, Snake! The name's Pliskin.
You did it. He shut down the Earth.
You kind of get something like that, and that is actually a thing that could happen in the future, because Musk and Bezos largely, but others, are trying to put thousands and thousands of satellites into low Earth orbit. And then down here on terra firma, the stock will crash. The company is not profitable. The components of it aren't profitable. The AI the AI portion is not going to work and is just polluting the air around us, at least in various areas. It is basically a non-consensual deep fake pedo machine in Grok and XAI. It's being integrated into various government systems like some of the other big AI programs. I mean, I think the question is how widespread or how much do we allow some of these AI systems to penetrate our lives and the economy and how we work and stuff before some of these companies collapse. The military, when they're not kind of blasting Anthropic for not doing what they want, they're using Anthropic for targeting. This stuff it's not just you and me or people in white collar jobs being forced to use this stuff. It's really everyone. And if that's allowed to penetrate sort of how we work, but also the economic underpinnings with these major IPOs that everyone's invested in, whether they like it or not. Yeah, when someone pulls out one of those legs, or when that starts to crumble from its inherent contradictions, there is a very wide blast radius, I think.
What about the economy, though? AI hellscape doesn't seem too far down the road. I was thinking about this too with like as they're using AI to diagnose you
Right.
medically, just like the amount of misdiagnoses.
Yeah.
Like, I had a girlfriend whose father was an ER doctor, and he was saying how the hospitals in Florida were using some AI program for radiology,
Oh yeah.
and how it was constantly wrong.
Yeah.
And they had to keep, so that they would have to do extra work. They would have to like redo the work of these
Yeah.
misdiagnoses from AI. But the hospital was fine to have it because the hospital just double charged for it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean that's so emblematic of how some of the stuff is like it's not always a question of does it work, is whoever's in charge, do they like whatever value they see that they're getting out of it? Like maybe they get a bonus for telling their subordinates to use AI, or maybe allows them to double charge for something, or maybe it seems like it works and they can lay off a bunch of people and get a bonus. But it's not really about, it's always the efficiency, the illusion of efficiency, but the sort of operating logic at play is not necessarily does it work, is it sort of like, is it good enough for our purposes? That's the question I think that a lot like leadership is asking in some of these companies.
And especially when you don't have the rules and regulations and the quality control of an actual human being. I know this happens with people when like a doctor will like take out the wrong kidney or something like that, or operate on the wrong knee.
Yeah.
But like when that happens with AI, when it's just like I go in for a hernia surgery and I wake up with like a new pair of tits, and then like I know like who gets recourse there. So I feel like we're gonna have like that kind of completely dysfunctional.
Yeah, displacement of
world.
responsibility for sure when things go wrong, and we already have that.
But then with the SpaceX IPO, with this again, it seems like the valuation of SpaceX is based on this idea that they are going to colonize the moon and Mars.
Yeah.
Which is just literally never going to happen.
Yeah.
The only way it will happen is if we can upload our brains onto a computer a la Neuralink.
Right.
But that's not going to happen either.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it will have to collapse at some point because this is a completely farcical promise. And so what happens then when we've valued this company that will most certainly never deliver? What happens to the world?
Well, I mean, it could easily be part of a greater economic crash, including like several of these AI companies crashing at once. And I don't know how, I mean, I think the losses will inevitably be socialized. I think maybe if the big tech companies can, they will pick up the pieces. I mean, there is a core function of SpaceX that is potentially useful, which is putting payloads in space, and they're trying to do it through reusable rockets and bring the cost down. I mean, that under kind of a more perhaps reasonable administration, that would be nationalized. You'd have like the rocket launching component of SpaceX, the actual space part, nationalized and put under NASA, which is currently run by Elon Musk's good friend. So who also has, I believe, a financial interest in SpaceX. Like, what happens first, I think, is like everything falls apart, and then you try to pick up the pieces in some constructive way.
And then these people suffer zero consequences.
Yeah, probably.
That's usually how it works.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to look forward to. That's great. I love it.
I mean, yeah, at least in Germany, they've like stormed Tesla factories. We're pretty far from that.
Yeah. No, they're about to build the biggest data center in my county, and it's just they've done some sort of weird like moratorium, being like, oh well, we'll take a year off and look a little bit more into it, but it's gonna happen. But even still, my belief about a lot of these data centers is that they're not even gonna get built, or they're gonna get built and they're not even gonna turn them on.
Well, that's the problem, I think, is that there's all this money being committed, at least on paper, and these kind of esoteric financial instruments being created to fund all this stuff and private credit markets and everything else. But like, we're not 5 years from now, we're not, all the data centers that we're supposedly building are not going to be on and working, like you said, and supporting 37 jobs each or whatever it is. Like, it's going to be much messier and and much more probably destructive along the way, because this is based on a fantasy or several fantasies, including the moon and Mars.
And you see how even just something as minor in terms of its actual physical infrastructure, like Alligator Alcatraz, which is supposed to be closed. I have to check it every week to see if they're actually closing it. But basically, the federal government and FEMA told DeSantis in Florida, we're not compensating you for this, because that's how Florida got around the legality of building there, was by saying, we're doing this with state money. This is a state project, so we're not under this the EPA federal scrutiny of building here.
Yeah.
And then they thought that was clever, and so then Donald Trump has basically stiffed them, saying, yeah, we're not going to pay you for this. So Floridians are footing the bill for $1 billion already, but then on top of that, the actual removal of everything that they've done is going to be devastating for the environment. And they put concrete there, they put all these generators, they put a bunch of porta potties, and that's just like what was meant to be like a modular concentration camp. Imagine these data centers, like those shit they're gonna pay. You won't get rid of them. I mean, they're gonna be there for thousands of years, basically.
Yeah, they'll be the great ruins of our civilization.
It's so embarrassing.
And everything is, like you were talking about the alligator Alcatraz. Everything is done on the cheap. I mean, everything is seemingly done where someone is getting stiffed, where they're just promises that can't be fulfilled. So, I'm sure some will work better than others, but there are going to be communities in Texas, Virginia, Florida, some of these states that are just going to have these kind of half-built husks, where like people come at night to try to rip out some of the electronics from the walls.
Well, I don't want to end on such a bummer.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. I mean, Mad Max seems like fun. But I wonder if there is some sort of light at the end of the tunnel you see. Some sort of percolations of hope that people are either wising up or there are modes of resistance.
Yeah.
And that this kind of rampant fraud just can't continue.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, China executes their billionaires, but China's, like you said, is also happy to invest in Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And maybe they know, like, this is how we end things. Like, we perpetuate your scamming till you hit rock
He doesn't really
bottom.
Criticize China because he has a gigafactory there. Yeah.
What can just the regular people either look forward to or even do themselves to kind of at least like start the proper reaction to this bullshit?
Well, a few things. Well, one, there's the old-fashioned saying that there are more of us than there are of them. And I think especially when you look closely at a lot of these tech oligarchs, which we unfortunately have, and more people are starting to do, they're very unappealing people. They're not charismatic, even in like the sort of crude Trumpist way or whatever. They have to, they align with MAGA, but you're not going to see like Mark Andreessen run for president. And so I think there's actually something good about that like, call them whatever you want, like, just fascists or authoritarian nerds or whatever. But like, they're not leaders, I would say. I mean, Musk somehow has become this sort of cultish leader, but even so, they're not necessarily appealing people. And he himself doesn't have the focus to like lead even his little America party, which he declared for like 5 minutes last year.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I had to decide whether to put that at the end of my book because all of a sudden he was like saying, oh, I'm going to have my own political party. And I was like, are you though? And it just ended up being a super PAC. So, I think those kinds of things. I think the fact that like tech is sort of out of ideas, and that's how people should see AI. And I think I said this earlier, but the politics of AI are really up for grabs. That does actually inspire me in some ways. Like I think the parties at the national level will probably continue to be disappointing, but there are people at the state and local level who, for various reasons and for legitimate reasons, don't like what AI is doing to their worlds, whether it's labor, education, data centers, pollution, psychosis, any number of things, or don't see the improvement in their own lives, or just don't like how it's being held over them. I think that is an opportunity for useful work, certainly at the grassroots level, where you've seen people oppose data centers successfully, or part of an ongoing political realignment, which who knows what that looks like or how it can be usefully harnessed. But that to me means something. And also that the promises we're seeing from the tech moguls are, inherently, I think, fraudulent and unfulfillable. And some people understand that. Some people might see, well, Elon promised for 10 years to make self-driving cars or a network of them, and that never worked. And that same kind of logic applies to kind of everything he does. And I think some people, I don't know if it's a sufficient or a critical mass of people, but people are waking up to that. So it's these sorts of things kind of put together. Like, yes, we have tech moguls as celebrities, but they're not necessarily like appealing leaders who people want to follow en masse. So, which means they have to rule by coercion, by sheer will and power and authoritarianism, and imposing their money on the rest of us. And perhaps there's room for, a broader backlash there.
Yeah, rule by lolcow is what it is. I mean, I get great pleasure out of hating Elon.
Yeah.
So I guess I try to look at it positively.
It provides material.
Yeah. Jacob, what else are you working on that the people can look forward to, or you'd like them to check out?
Most of my stuff's usually posted at some point on my newsletter, which you can see on jacobsilverman.com. Hopefully have a feature or two in the hopper, but more soon.
All right, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you.